Association for a question.
Yeah, either one have any specific ideas on how to combat the absentee landlords or the blight in particular? Because the reality is that blight, you start fixing blight and start cleaning it up, you will take care of a lot of other issues. We already know that education is affected by blight, and the crime is affected by blight, quality of life is affected by blight.
And property values are.
And under the mayor, under the current mayor, that's proliferated.
Right.
The 10 years you have 2,000 properties, now to almost 100 properties that are blighted. He had a thing called the Landlord Hall of Shame, which we also have our Landlord Hall of Shame on our site. Ours is a lot more accurate than his. Because his possesses 5 people that all 5 totally own 2 properties. All 5 combined own 2 properties. A little hard to have a Landlord Hall of Shame from the other landlords anymore. One's dead. I mean, that's just on his Hall of Shame. But I want to know if you have anything specific. This current administration bill, use Act 90.
I mentioned, were you here when I talked about blight? But a little bit, yeah, okay. Well, the inspection staff, the city of Allentown is greatly understaffed. And one of the effects of that is, as you know, the statistics show that in 2012 there were more than 3 times as many inspections of subpar housing and dilapidated housing, housing that had issues than in 2016. More than 3 times as many inspections then. Or another way of putting it, less than 1/3 as many inspections in 2016 as in 2012. That has to change, and that department will be restaffed. The numbers of inspections will go up. But in addition to that, the code enforcement has to be stepped up. In other words, there are codes and ordinances on the books to address the situation, especially with absentee landlords, and it's not happening. That has to be enforced. And these landlords have to know that if they don't do something about cleaning up their act on these houses, or vacant houses, or even occupied houses that are becoming more dilapidated, those houses will be condemned, all right? And they will lose those properties. They will lose that income or tax shelter or whatever you want to call it, both actually. They will lose it if they don't step up and do something about it. So if you do all of those things, that should begin to make the situation better. Do you have any ideas beyond?
No, okay.
You have your own ideas. You have your own ideas.
And the fairly consistent answer is, well, we can't do that here. But we talked to the people that created these ideas from Pennsylvania. This is any region of the world, the city can't use Act 90.
Yeah.
And they fail to use Act 90. Act 90 real quickly for you, but it's the fact that you can withhold licenses and if they have a property that's in disarray.
Right.
We have landlords that got several properties, they're condemned while they have other properties. You can withhold their rental license the following year if they don't take care of the other problem.
Well, something else I will do is also find out what's working in other cities around the country, and I will get CED on it. I will find out what's working in terms of blight, what's effective, and if we're not doing it here, we're going to adopt that here. All right, so to speed up that process.
By the way, that's a great suggestion. What I want to say is check Bethlehem, because they're doing some amazing things over in Bethlehem also. Not to take away from what you're saying, but they're using special techniques under the Act.
Right.
So anyhow, that's my suggestion.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and what Ingram's saying, we have at least more than 1,000, blighted, properties in Allentown, and we really need to to involve the landlords, because some of them are absent; they're not here. Probably the landlords are in New York or in other cities, but we need to get them involved. If they cannot improve those, developments or improve those buildings, then we can take them over as a city and then do something better. Because we have a lot of people, even tenants themselves, who are complaining about those buildings. And that's where the crime starts. Because of those buildings, the crime starts over there, then it explodes in the streets. So, we need to make sure, and that's one of the one of the things that we should take care of. In my 100 days in the festival office, I'm going to take care of those blighted buildings, because we really need to take care of that. That's where all the crime is coming from.
You want to follow up?
Just one quick follow-up thing also. Is that as far as we can find, we've looked at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cities across America. We are the only city in America with a 5-year inspection cycle. So in other words, what we found with some people is years ago when the housing market crashed and it's cheap to buy a house, people look at, wow, this is only a couple $1,000s. It's got 4 rental units. Oh, we're landlords now. We'll make some money. Well, they don't realize after 5 years, when it came time for the inspection, the building was condemned. They had no money to fix it because there were so many violations. If the inspection cycle was tightened up to where it's only 3 years, maybe some of these buildings wouldn't get so far gone to be condemned. Instead, they go in there and say, listen, you got this fixed. After 5 years, they're condemning them because they're so far gone because the people, it's out of their hands. Would you do anything to look into at least doing something after the inspection cycle? Because, not to mention, homes in the West End were told flat out by the inspection department, they'll be lucky if they see inspectors in 20 years. There's too many rentals to inspect in a 5-year inspection cycle. It's only having the inspections you have. Yeah, 7 inspectors? 7 inspectors?
7.
There's no way 7 inspectors in a 5-year
How
time
many were there
can
in
inspect
2000?
37,000 units.
How many were there as inspectors in 2012 when they were doing
2012
3 times as many?
there was only like 16.
15?
15 or 16.
16?
It's about several years before that, it was 20-something.
No,
that's not.
That's how they cut the budget. That's how they eliminate taxes.
Yeah.
Every time one of them retires, we just eliminate that position. But
Did you finish your comments? We have some other politicians and some candidates, and I know Ed White wants to ask a follow-up. Is there anybody else? Now, I have some questions also. Is there anybody, Mr. Walker?
I have one. I'm very
School board
curious.
candidate.
I'm a school board candidate for City of Allentown School Board. I have a question for you, John. How do you plan to affect any educational standard or any school taxes when that is a completely separate entity? I'm curious, what is your plan to do that?
Well, when it comes to school property taxes, I like to cite 2 examples in terms of school construction costs and also school acquisition, property acquisition costs. In my opinion, there was $10 million in waste. That goes straight to property taxes, higher property taxes. The first one was Building 21. Building 21 was acquired for $12 million. The decision was made in a closed-door session in one night, no public input. Avatia made out. Avatia bought that property just a few years ago for less than $3 million. He did fill it up with a tenant, Building 21, the charter school, but I know what values are because I appraise commercial properties all over the Lehigh Valley, all over Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, and the whole world, actually. And I know that that property was worth no more than $8 million. They made that decision very quickly, without any expert input, or if they did, they might argue that the appraisal justified it. I never saw the appraisal, but I'll say another thing. Since I'm in that business, I will make sure that those appraisals, that the city, even if they hire somebody, I'll make sure those appraisals are objective and accurate, and are professionally done. So, in my opinion, a professional appraisal, an objective appraisal of that property would have come in around $8 million. So that's $4 million they spent like that. Then, on top of that, they're proposing elementary school. Great, we need a new elementary school, absolutely, over at 12th and Ward. Well, they're proposing to build that school for $38 million. That comes to $345 a square foot of floor area. Well, guess what? They built the Nishman Middle School in Bethlehem, which just opened, a beautiful school, bells and whistles, top of the line, top quality. They built it for $295 a square foot. That's an extra $5.5 to $6 million. That's, in my opinion, waste. you have to make these people who come in and do their dog and pony shows, the architects and the consultants and whatever, you have to hold them to the fire on these costs. And you can show, hey, what, you know, this is what it should be built for, top quality school. Even Michigan, 295 is pretty high, I have to say, but it's okay, it's at the top. But 345 is inexcusable. That's $10 million for those two examples, two projects. How many others have there been over the years? By the way, I called the previous, the interim superintendent. What was his name? He had a very famous name.
Jackie Cooper.
Say that?
Gary Cooper.
Cooper! Yeah, Gary Cooper. Yeah.
You remember that?
I called him on the phone, and the guy was like stumbling all over the place. He was very apologetic. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Ingram, you know, I guess we didn't, you know, I'm sorry about that, you know. What the hell was that? I called the previous superintendent on a similar issue years ago. What was his name?
Mr. Mayo.
I never got to talk to him. He wouldn't take my calls. He never returned my calls. I had to talk to the guy under him, the financial guy, who apparently didn't know what he was doing either. What was his name?
Either.
Financial guy?
I heard that.
CFO?
I heard that.
He talked.
No, the
He
financial
talked.
guy.
He talked.
Lost 19 million pound 11.
Yeah.
And, you know, they don't know what they're doing. They don't understand costs. Look, I don't blame them. They're not cost people. These are administrators, whatever their backgrounds are. I know about costs. I know about cash flows too. I can put a value on a cash flow. I know about the markets. I know that you borrow money when the bond market is priced high or when yields and interest rates are very low. That's when you borrow money, all right? You don't wait for interest rates to go up to borrow money, and you don't ever borrow money on a floating rate. Never do you do that. It has to be a fixed, low interest rate forever. So, anyway, I didn't mean to.
I think the question was, though,
How
how
do you
can you
affect
have
that?
input? How can you have input on the school
Okay.
board?
I've already
Is that-
mentioned this to Dr. Parker. I got the impression that he will allow me to work with him on the phone or in meetings, that I certainly will go to school board meetings. I will provide input there. I don't want to come across as a know-it-all, you know, hammer kind of guy, because that just turns people off. But I am an expert in certain areas, and I think I should provide advice and free advice and consulting. We can save some money, in fact. The city can save some money.
If you get 50 grand
Through my expertise, we don't have to hire a consultant. Oh my God, look at the consulting fees the city's been paying. Are you kidding me? The water and sewer thing, those consulting fees? Oh my God, what the hell did they do for that report? They were paying what? A couple of $100,000, $500,000?
People also
School district does the
forget,
same thing.
What, for a lousy 80-page report or
people
whatever?
also forget that city council, I need to complete that with Delta's thermal group, but I thought city council had gotten their own expert to review the water and sewer lease, and then Mayor Pulowski hired another consultant from the same company.
It's just.
I don't recall that
It's not
offhand.
necessary to pay these
Which
high
is a
consulting
conflict,
fees. There's
obviously.
something else going on there.
Yeah.
Okay, and I will not stand for that.
And you know, adding on to what Ingram is saying is the school district doesn't fall under the mayor's jurisdiction. So what we need to do, like what you're saying, we have to have teamwork. We have to, you know, approach the school district, talk to the, you know, superintendent, and work as a team and bring, you know, everything together. If we need to improve it, we really need to improve the school district. Like what I'm saying, even if it's buses or the schools or, you know, the subjects they're doing all that, we really need to do it and by approach, because I cannot do it as a mayor, or we cannot do it as a mayor if it takes because the superintendent is in charge of the Allentown School District. So what we have to do is approach him and talk to him, and then we can find a, you know, a solution, and then we can work together as a team.
And work together as opposed to what this administration is doing, is working at cross purposes.
Yeah.
That's something that there has never been that cooperation between the school
There's nothing,
district
yeah, there's no
and the city of
cooperation.
Allentown.
Yeah, there's nothing.
Yeah. Okay, we have some other, at least candidates. I don't know, I know Ed has a follow-up.
My question is from somebody who had to leave, so I just wanted to follow up with the
Oh,
the two
okay.
candidates.
And then we have at least one other candidate here, so I want to give her an opportunity. Anybody else who has questions, and I have questions.
No, I have no question.
You have no questions? Okay, do you want to?
I'm just relaying a question from Rigo Peralta, who's an artist who is from the Dominican Republic and is concerned about the future of the city in terms of taking the city forward from where it is now, and also about the interactions with the police department. He expressed that there's concern about the kids that don't want to interact with the police, and although the police department has made strides in that area, what do the two of you think is the future of the city, and what can you do as mayor to help promote all of the city rather than just the NIS? And what can you do to improve relations between the police department and the citizens, particularly the youth? That's what he asked me to ask.
Yeah, that's why, I mean, I'll start. Can I start? Yeah, I mean, if you watch my, I was on Channel 69, I talked about that. I mean, basically I say, you know, we need to have neighborhood. I mean, we need to go out there and talk to the stakeholders. We need to involve the parents. I know, like what you say, the kids don't want to talk to the police. But if we approach the parents, the stakeholders, and say, hey, this is the situation, we're having so many problems here, the kids are in the street. What can we do to get those kids back to school? Some of the kids are even dropping out of school because probably they don't like the subject, or they don't like school, or for other bad, reasons, or they're into drugs or whatever. So we need to involve the community and help the police. We as a council, I think we're letting down the police. The police is doing themselves. They are, definitely. Because I talked to one of my guys, a friend of mine in the police, the city is letting them down. The city has to go in charge up front and talk to the police, get the police officers or get the police chief, and go to the community and talk with our community, see what's going on with the community. Because there's something in the grassroots which we have to solve. For us to solve all these crimes which are happening in the city, we have to see we have to go in the grassroots and see what's going on. There's a cause for it. So many causes. Not even jobs, not even, you know, what we're talking, but the kids are leaving school, they're going in the streets and all that. Sometimes, that's why I say that probably we need to set up something for, recreational centers, where we can bring those kids and maybe put some teachers there after school. They can come over there. For those who don't want to go to school, they can come to those recreational centers because we have them, and we can talk about the issues of Allentown. Maybe, you know, train them in computers, train them in IT, do that, and see how we can, you know, counter this crime issue we have in Allentown. And there's no way the police can do it alone. They need the help of the city. That's what we gotta do.
Thank you.
Copy that, ditto that, but I already mentioned the neighborhood bonding concept with the police. Step that up, bringing in more bilingual police from possibly from New York City, who would love to live in a much lower cost area, but would bring the experience. And the whole idea of that school idea that I had, the voluntary education, to develop more well-rounded kids growing up, giving them the confidence in dealing with the outside world, not just the inner city neighborhood they're used to, but dealing with everybody. And working, I can see actually being a guest teacher once in a while as mayor. I could teach geography, I could teach government and politics, I could teach a lot of different things, so city and regional planning for that matter. So I would actually love to do that, but no, getting back, I would be working with the neighborhood groups. We have neighborhood groups in place. I will be going to neighborhood group meetings, not just during a campaign, which is when everybody does it, right? I will be going to neighborhood meetings as often as I can. I will also coordinate with church groups. In fact, let's bring everybody together, neighborhood groups with church groups. I went to a food and faith thing the other day at the Presbyterian Church over at Tillman and Cedar Crest. Very interesting exercise. And I mentioned to them when I first walked in, I was a little late, so I didn't know what they had been talking about for an hour. This went on for a couple hours, so I said, well, you know, it's always bothered me when I go to Giant or Wegmans or one of the other supermarkets, and if I get there when they're starting to close down the deli, for example, and I find out that all that food is going to be thrown out because it wasn't sold. You know, there's something wrong there. You know, why can't you get that food to the people who need it? Look at, there are a lot of people, homeless, not just homeless, but also people who can't even buy their food because their money's going to rent and utilities and healthcare costs, and they're sacrificing what they're able to afford to eat. That's terrible. That's awful. Anyway, just there are a lot of things that can be done and coordinated, and I intend to be that kind of a mayor.
Did you answer? Yeah, okay. Does anybody else have a question? Yes, introduce yourself and ask your question.
Hi, my name is Stephanie A. McDonald. I've lived in Allentown for about 8 years now, going on 9. I've been getting involved within the community, and my question to you two gentlemen is how you're going to assist those that are mentally disabled and homeless, and also children that are homeless. As you know, sometimes in the middle of the night, you see tons of high school kids, middle school kids, and homeless people trying to find shelter when there is no actual support within the community. So how are you going to handle that?
Okay, I'll start on that one. The homeless, you know, the first thing I'll do as mayor of Allentown, I need to see the roots, the ground is why they are homeless. There are certain issues, I mean, there's so different ways why they are. It's either it could be because they don't have jobs, those kids, or maybe they were thrown out of the housing, or maybe they ran away from their parents, or maybe they're even coming out of state and coming to live under the bridge here in Allentown. So we need to see what's going on with those homeless. Why are they being homeless? Once we figure out what's going on with the homeless issues, then we can, develop some projects where we can try and accommodate them and help them and bring them into Allentown. Maybe develop a program where we can, talk to those kids, help them, give them food, give them direction, give them education, and try to give them placement. Because they could be the parents could be out of state, maybe they ran away. We need to find parents for those kids. We need to find somewhere where they can go and enjoy a better life, or maybe start a better life. There's so many issues with homeless. I've seen a lot of homeless people in Allentown. I mean, some of them even, they stay in my office asking me for money, but I don't have an opportunity of asking them why they're homeless. But that's one thing I can, when I'm the CEO of the Allentown, I'm the mayor, I have that opportunity to go into the streets and say, hey, why are you homeless? Why? What's the problem? And then once I can interact with them and I know exactly why they're homeless, then I can figure out a way of helping those kids. If they ran out from their parents, maybe I can reach out to the parents and see what's the problem. Or if the parents don't want to get them back, I can reach out to the relatives. If the relatives don't want to give, then I can give them an opportunity maybe to get them finance to go to school, training, job placement, and give them a job and help them. Thank you.
In Seattle and other cities, we've actually refurbished old abandoned properties and to incorporate the homeless and making sure they have a place to be, so that way they're not always on the street.
Right, on the street, yeah. Exactly.
Safety. And especially for those that, as you know, there's certain places in Allentown that they do have programs, but not fully funded, which is more of a major concern for me because we have these people that have all these abilities. And we're not giving them the support that they need because they go through the churches, they go through the city itself. And it's like one after another thing, it's a cycle. And
yeah, that's being neglected because we don't have funding for those homeless a lot. I think, we just need to develop something where we can get funding for the homeless and, set up some programs for them to help them so that they can be out of the streets, they can be out of the bridge. It's a very scary, sight when you see people sleeping under the bridge. It's not safe. Anything can happen. So we need definitely, if I'm the mayor, I'll look into that and get more funding for them, maybe create some housing, maybe create some training for them, and then, give them a better life.
And many of the homeless, it's not just, it's a crisis of, it could be a combination of things. It could be drug dependency, along with not having a job, a criminal record, which totally destroys someone for life. I agree, there needs to be more effort at rehabilitation. It actually costs less to rehabilitate somebody than to put them in a prison for life. So why not put more emphasis on rehabilitating somebody and finding a way to expunge their criminal record if they do well, and so they can get a job, rather than just sending them back to jail or prison 100 times during their lifetime, and they come out and they're homeless and they go back to drugs and crime and back in prison. It's totally senseless. The cost of incarcerating hundreds of thousands, millions of people. How many people in the United States are incarcerated? Over 10 million.
Most in the world.
I think there's like
It's very-
30 million have been in jail at one point or another.
It's
or
very,
40 million.
very, very expensive, and not to mention the crime that goes on within the prison. So,
I think Ken wanted to.
Nothing really to, give the answer to, but knowing that the Olympic Soul Store of Allentown has the highest eviction rate in the nation. We also just the highest eviction rate in the nation. We also just found out that our
Nation?
Yes, the nation.
Wow.
We just found that our poverty rate went from 27 to 31%.
Whoa.
So with that right there, have you ever either one of you given thought to either inclusionary zoning, rent control, or rent stabilization? I don't really know the big answer. I just wondered if you thought about it. You may not have actually thought about it, for the simple fact that it hasn't come across your plate yet. But first of all, we like to say we personally, the Tenant Association, are against inclusionary zoning, the failure across the nation, and we're against rent control across the good failure. All it does is that rent control is proven to look for light, really. But I'm just wondering if either of you gentlemen have thought about these things, if yes or no, pretty much. Might be something you didn't really think of before. Now we're putting it on your plate, but just wanted to know if you want to talk about it involved.
I have, because I've worked in a field. I've actually written zoning ordinances in the past. Okay, when I was young, I wrote a number of zoning ordinances. Land use plan, subdivision regulations, site plan review, the whole works, master plans. I would be a mayor who would require the people in community, the CED, community economic development, to go out again and see what's working well in other cities around the country. I don't know if that's been going on or not in the city of Allentown, if they've actually done that research. I will require them to do that research because I want to know what's doing well in comparable cities around the country. Not necessarily comparable cities, it could be the major cities that I mentioned earlier, and she mentioned also Seattle, Portland, Oregon, Austin, Texas. We don't have to stick to Pennsylvania. But we will look at what's going on in Pennsylvania too, because you do have state laws you have to deal with, state regulations and laws. So we'll look at all of that. And you're looking at somebody who actually appraised rent-controlled apartment buildings in Manhattan and Brooklyn and Queens many, many years ago when I worked in Manhattan, having worked in Manhattan for 15 years, a long time ago. But anyway, so I know all about rent control also, and it's not really fair the way they had it set up. I think it's changed a little bit, but the way they had it set up was generations could hand down their apartments generation after generation after generation, no matter what your income, all right, and they were paying like $200 a month rent for an apartment in Manhattan, and they're making $100,000 a year or more, and they're paying $200. It's just not fair. Rent stabilization is a little better. It's not as bad as rent control, but yeah, all these things will be looked into, analyzed, and we'll come up with the best solutions.
Do you want to?
No, just one thing I haven't looked at, but I'll look at that. That's what he's saying. Yeah.
Okay. I have a couple quick questions. Does anybody? I don't want to shut anybody out. Does anybody else have any other questions? Oh, yes, go ahead, Mrs. Walker, Mrs.
I
Walker.
do not have a question, but I would like to take the time, since I know this is coming to a close, to first of all personally thank you both for taking the time to speak. When I saw this come about, which it came out quickly, I was hoping for all 5 candidates. I'm very disappointed with the election. I feel that all 5 candidates should have fair coverage from start to finish. It shouldn't matter what the preliminary polls show as far as percentages, because percentages can change at a moment's notice. Life changes quickly. You know, Mr. Temple, I've never got to speak to you directly one-on-one. At some point, I would like to do that, yet unfortunately I won't be able to stay too long tonight. But I do want to take the time to say thank you. I know events come up, and that when you're running for an office, people expect you to be at everything. They expect to see posts on everything. It's just not possible, especially if you do work or have other things, you know, that you are committed to already. But I wanted to let you know myself, I appreciate the fact that you came tonight, that you did speak. It was nice to hear both views, and it would have been nice to hear everybody else.
I want to say both of you, thank you for stepping up for my town. And no matter what happens in this election, please don't disappear on us. We need people to be involved and to stay here.
Yeah.
Please don't disappear. Don't drop out no matter how this election goes. We need you to be involved. We all need to be involved. Thank you.
Louis, my cohort, do you have a question?
Actually, I don't, but I will say that as soon as this is over, I will quickly scurry about a block away, and I will have this uploaded, and it will be visible on the Book of Face within the
On
next
YouTube,
hour or so.
Lehigh Valley Coffee Party page.
It'll be posted to the Facebook groups as well.
And yeah, the Facebook groups. Okay. Nobody else has any questions? Because I have some very fast. Yes, I'm sorry.
I have a question.
Please identify yourself.
Yes, my name is Colin Ziegler. I have a question for both of them, both candidates. First, I have a comment. I was at the bus station on 7th and Linden, or between Hamilton and Linden, right there, the Atlanta bus station. I was talking to a group of people who I thought was waiting on the bus. And they had kids with them and everything. They were homeless. Which after I talked to one woman, I found out they were all homeless. And that's where they slept. My question is, you know, what would you do about that? What would what could you do about that?